The autumn moonlight cast silver shadows across the rolling hills of the Cascade Mountains in Oregon. Ms. Elena Reeves' property wasn't vast, but the 40 acres of mixed forest and meadow provided perfect hunting grounds for Whisper, a 4-year-old Maine Coon with distinctive silver tabby markings. Ms. Reeves was a retired marine biologist who had spent 2 decades studying predator behavior in Alaska's wilderness for the National Science Foundation. She had documented wolf packs, analyzed bear feeding patterns, and tracked lynx populations through some of the most remote territories in North America. 3 years ago, after a career-ending injury from a fall through ice, she relocated to this inherited cabin in Oregon, bringing only Whisper, the cat who had been her cabin companion during her final research seasons. This week, Ms. Reeves had traveled to Portland to present her findings at a conservation symposium. Whisper remained under the loose supervision of Jake Morrison, a local teenager who checked the automatic feeders and ensured the cat appeared each evening. As always, Whisper was free to roam the extensive property, following ancient feline instincts to patrol territory boundaries at dawn and dusk. A severe windstorm had battered the region just days before, toppling centuries-old Douglas firs and reshaping the familiar landscape. This evening, following his territorial rounds, Whisper padded silently along a deer trail that wound deeper into the forest. His sensitive nose detected hundreds of new scents the storm had uncovered: exposed earth, rotting wood, and displaced small mammals seeking new shelter. Near a section where 3 massive trees had created a natural clearing, Whisper suddenly froze. His pupils dilated as he caught a scent that made every instinct scream danger: the musk of a large predator, wild and completely foreign to these Pacific Northwest woods. The fur along his spine rose in primitive warning. What Whisper couldn't understand was that 5 days earlier, a catastrophic breach had occurred at Wild Rapids Sanctuary, a private facility housing exotic animals about 12 miles northeast. The storm had destroyed a section of reinforced fencing, allowing several animals to escape into the wilderness, including Raja, a 2-year-old male snow leopard. While most escapees had been recovered, Raja remained elusive, hidden somewhere in the dense forest. The sanctuary had informed only local authorities and residents within an 8-mile radius, hoping to avoid widespread panic while search teams worked around the clock. Curiosity overriding caution, a trait that had served his species well for millennia, Whisper crept forward with the fluid grace only cats possess. He approached a natural amphitheater formed by fallen timber, moving with such silence that even his own paws made no sound on the damp forest floor. On a horizontal log, partially concealed by sword ferns, lay a creature that evolutionary wisdom told Whisper to avoid: an adult snow leopard. Raja's pale gray coat, marked with distinctive dark rosettes, seemed to glow in the filtered moonlight. The snow leopard had been hiding for nearly a week, exhausted and disoriented. Born and raised in captivity with regular feeding schedules, his hunting abilities were severely limited. A deep gash along his shoulder, sustained during his desperate escape through the damaged fence, had further compromised his already marginal survival skills. Hungry and weakened, Raja had barely moved for the past 2 days. Whisper stopped approximately 12 feet away. A truly wild cat would never approach such a formidable predator, but Whisper had lived his entire life in human company with minimal exposure to large carnivores. His natural wariness was tempered by curiosity and the confidence that came from being an apex predator in his own environment. Additionally, Raja wasn't displaying typical aggressive postures. No snarling, no predatory crouch, just the profound exhaustion of a creature pushed beyond its limits. Heavy clouds began obscuring the moon, promising rain within the hour. Whisper's ears twitched as he assessed the changing weather, then his attention returned to Raja. The combination of feline curiosity, unfamiliarity with big cats, and the territorial confidence of his breed caused Whisper to continue his approach rather than retreat to safety. Moving with the deliberate precision characteristic of his species, Whisper advanced. His tail wasn't tucked in fear but held at half-mast, the cautious posture of a cat encountering something interesting but potentially dangerous. Raja watched through heavy-lidded eyes, his body tensing reflexively, but too weakened to mount any significant response. After several minutes of mutual assessment, Whisper made a decision that defied millions of years of evolutionary programming. He approached within arm's reach and, in a gesture that would have meant certain death under normal circumstances, extended his neck and briefly touched his nose to Raj's face, the feline equivalent of a formal introduction. In any other situation, this bold move might have triggered a deadly response from a snow leopard. But Raja, exhausted and conditioned by years of human care to accept the presence of other species, simply closed his eyes and accepted the contact. This moment marked an extraordinary intersection, not friendship as humans conceptualize it, but a temporary truce between two felines who, under these unique circumstances, posed no immediate threat to each other. Raja, after years of captivity surrounded by various animals and handlers, had lost much of his wild aggression toward non-threatening creatures. Whisper, raised in the protected environment of research stations, lacked the deep-seated fear that his wild cousins would have possessed. After this brief contact, Whisper began moving toward home. He paused several times, looking back at Raja with the intense stare cats use when evaluating situations. Perhaps it was hunger, exhaustion, and the approaching storm that motivated Raja to slowly rise and begin following the domestic cat. A decision driven by basic survival needs rather than any complex social bonding. The first raindrops began falling as both cats moved through the forest. Whisper led them toward an old equipment shed at the property's edge, a weathered structure that hadn't been used since Ms. Reeves' arrival, filled with abandoned logging equipment and canvas tarps. A damaged ventilation grate provided entry for smaller animals, but the main door had been secured for years. With the agility that made his breed famous, Whisper squeezed through the broken grate and then used his claws to work loose a rotted board near the door's base, creating an opening just large enough for Raja to squeeze through. This wasn't Whisper's first time accessing the shed. He had often sheltered there during storms or used it as a hunting base for the mice that nested among the stored equipment. Inside, several heavy canvas tarps had been draped over machinery, creating elevated platforms and hollow spaces. Whisper had long ago claimed the highest tarp-covered surface as his personal retreat. Now, as Raja entered, the domestic cat settled onto his usual perch while the snow leopard, guided by instinct to seek elevated, defensible positions, found his own platform among the equipment below. Hours later, when the rain had stopped, Jake arrived for his evening check. When Whisper didn't appear at his usual feeding spot on the cabin's porch, Jake began calling and searching the immediate area. Whisper, hearing the familiar voice associated with food, responded to conditioned behavior and emerged from the forest, leaving Raja hidden in the shed. Jake filled the food dish and checked the cabin as instructed, completely unaware of the extraordinary guest sheltering just 100 yards away. After Jake departed, Whisper returned to the shed with portions of his food, not from altruistic sharing, but due to the caching behavior common in many predators, including domestic cats. Raja, driven by hunger, consumed what Whisper had brought, though the commercial cat food was far from his natural diet. Over the following days, a routine began to establish itself. Whisper, still responding to Jake's evening feeding schedule, spent increasing time in the shed with Raja. This wasn't friendship as humans understand it, but rather the practical coexistence of two predators who had found mutual benefit in proximity. For Raja, the shed provided secure shelter, and Whisper's presence wasn't threatening. In fact, it was beneficial when the domestic cat brought food scraps. Raja's shoulder wound gradually healed, and with some nutrition, even inadequate for his needs, his strength slowly returned. Both cats existed in an unusual state of détente. Not the complex social bonding humans might imagine, but an atypical arrangement created by extraordinary circumstances. On the morning of the 6th day since Raja's arrival, Jake noticed something unusual. Strange tracks in the muddy area near the equipment shed and Whisper's food disappearing much faster than normal. With experience growing up in rural Oregon, he suspected a wild animal had discovered an easy food source, possibly a raccoon or even a black bear. He decided to investigate the shed, something he rarely bothered to check. Whisper, sensitive to changes in routine and Jake's heightened alertness, detected the boy's intention and darted ahead toward the shed. This reaction could be explained by territorial protection or resource guarding rather than any conscious effort to warn Raja. When Jake opened the shed door, Both cats had vanished. Whisper might have startled Raja with his agitated behavior, or the sound of the creaking hinges might have alerted the recovered snow leopard to retreat deeper into the forest. However, unmistakable evidence remained of a large feline presence: scratched canvas, tufts of pale fur caught on metal edges, and most tellingly, clear paw prints of a big cat in the damp earth near the entrance. Jake, who had grown up hunting and tracking with his grandfather, immediately recognized these weren't prints from any native Oregon predator. He immediately called Ms. Reeves, interrupting her symposium presentation with an urgent message that sent her racing back to Oregon a day early. Ms. Reeves arrived at the cabin as the sun was setting. Jake was waiting on the porch, his worried expression evident even in the dim light. He showed her the photos he'd taken of the mysterious tracks while explaining Whisper's recent behavioral changes, extended absences, and dramatically increased appetite. Ms. Reeves studied the images with the trained eye of someone who had spent decades tracking predators. She immediately identified them as snow leopard prints. At that moment, her phone received an emergency alert from Oregon Fish and Wildlife about an escaped snow leopard from Wild Rapids Sanctuary following the recent storm. The pieces fell into place with startling clarity. After convincing Jake to return home for safety, Ms. Reeves began calling for Whisper. The cat appeared from the tree line, but not alone. Approximately 20 feet behind him, a pale form watched from the shadows of the Douglas firs, an adult snow leopard observing the scene with cautious intelligence. Ms. Reeves remained perfectly still, drawing upon decades of field experience with dangerous predators. She called softly to Whisper, and after a moment of apparent indecision, looking between his human and the snow leopard, the domestic cat approached his owner. While gently stroking Whisper's fur, Ms. Reeves observed Raja with professional assessment. Her trained eye immediately recognized this as an escaped captive animal rather than a wild predator. The way he positioned himself, his lack of extreme fear toward humans, and especially his non-aggressive relationship with Whisper all indicated an animal raised in human care. The evening light created long shadows across the forest floor as Raja remained motionless, watching. The tension gradually eased as Ms. Reeves sat down on a fallen log, removing any potentially threatening posture. Whisper settled beside her, occasionally glancing toward Raja as if expecting something. A cool breeze carried the scent of pine needles and damp earth. After nearly 30 minutes of silence, Raja began moving, not retreating deeper into the forest, but slowly approaching step by careful step, his pale eyes never leaving the human before him. This behavior confirmed Ms. Reeves' assessment. This was a snow leopard accustomed to human presence while retaining wild caution. Ms. Reeves slowly reached for her camera and began photographing, capturing this rare moment. The quiet shutter sounds didn't startle Raja, another clear indication of an animal long habituated to human technology and presence. When Raja reached approximately 15 feet away, he settled into a resting position, still alert but no longer actively defensive. Whisper looked between Ms. Reeves and Raja, his tail twitching with the focused attention cats display when monitoring complex situations. As darkness deepened, Ms. Reeves knew not to force closer contact. She stood carefully and returned to the cabin with Whisper. From the kitchen window, she continued observing as Raja remained in his chosen position, clearly evaluating this new development in his circumstances. That night, Ms. Reeves researched Wild Rapids Sanctuary extensively online. The reports and reviews she found confirmed her suspicions about substandard animal care. Multiple violations regarding enclosure size, veterinary care, and enrichment activities painted a picture of an operation more concerned with profit than animal welfare. Raja, according to the information she discovered, was a snow leopard born at a roadside zoo in Nevada, confiscated during an animal welfare investigation 2 years ago and transferred to Wild Rapids as part of a placement program that clearly prioritized convenience over proper care. The next morning, as dawn painted the sky pale rose, Ms. Reeves saw Raja resting beneath a massive cedar near the equipment shed. Whisper, already active and positioned by the door, made soft chirping sounds, the greeting calls Maine Coons use with familiar companions. Ms. Reeves opened the door and watched as Whisper moved directly toward Raja. Their interaction unfolded with natural ease, no signs of stress or aggression, just the comfortable recognition of two beings familiar with each other's presence. In a remarkable moment, Whisper approached Raja's side and gently headbutted the snow leopard's shoulder, classic feline bonding behavior. What amazed Ms. Reeves was that Raja accepted this contact calmly, even seeming to enjoy the interaction. Ms. Reeves quickly captured this moment with her camera, a photograph that would later become central to her research on interspecies relationships among felids. In the following days, Ms. Reeves spent hours observing the relationship between Whisper and Raja from a distance, using the field observation skills she had perfected in Alaska. She documented fascinating behaviors, both cats drinking from the same stream, Whisper grooming Raja's head and ears, and numerous instances of Raja mimicking Whisper's hunting techniques when stalking forest prey. One particularly significant behavior from an animal psychology perspective was their mutual grooming sessions. Whisper meticulously cleaning Raja's face and ears while the snow leopard remained completely relaxed, occasionally returning the favor with gentle licks from his much larger tongue. Ms. Reeves also began supplementing Raja's diet with appropriate prey. Not the commercial cat food Whisper had been sharing, but fresh fish from local suppliers and occasional small game, more suitable for a large felid's nutritional needs. Raja quickly adapted to this feeding schedule, appearing at consistent times each day, usually accompanied by Whisper. Raja's adaptation to the forest environment was remarkable. The snow leopard seemed to understand the property boundaries, never venturing toward the nearby residential areas. His relationship with Whisper appeared to provide crucial education about navigating the human world, interpreting sounds, scents, and human activities through Whisper's responses and reactions. Instead of immediately contacting authorities, Ms. Reeves reached out to Dr. Sarah Chin, a colleague from the International Snow Leopard Trust and a leading expert on big cat behavior and conservation. She transmitted photos and detailed behavioral observations, seeking professional guidance on this unprecedented situation. Their conversation lasted nearly 3 hours, with Ms. Reeves sharing every detail about Raja's behavior, his relationship with Whisper, and her professional assessment of the snow leopard's background and condition. Dr. Chen listened intently, asking specific questions about territorial behaviors, feeding patterns, and the dynamics of interspecies interaction she was witnessing. Dr. Chen wasn't entirely surprised by this unusual relationship, explaining that under specific conditions, particularly with captive-born animals, non-competitive interspecies bonds had been documented in professional literature. She cited a case in Russia where an orphan snow leopard had bonded with a researcher's Siberian cat, and another instance in Mongolia involving a snow leopard and a shepherd's dog. The critical issue, Dr. Chen emphasized, was finding appropriate long-term placement for Raja, not returning him to a substandard facility, but also not allowing a snow leopard to remain in Oregon's forests where he didn't belong ecologically and could potentially pose risks to local communities. Dr. Chen proposed a solution, a new conservation program in Mongolia where international partners were developing innovative rehabilitation techniques for captive-born snow leopards. This program combined cutting-edge animal psychology with traditional knowledge from Mongolian herders, creating conditions for animals like Raja to develop essential survival skills in a safe, monitored environment. While Dr. Chen made arrangements, Ms. Reeves began improving the equipment shed. She installed proper ventilation, created elevated platforms mimicking the rocky ledges snow leopards prefer in their natural habitat, and reinforced the structure to withstand harsh winter weather if necessary. She also positioned motion-activated cameras to record Raja's behavior during her absence. The footage collected over the following weeks provided invaluable insights into the relationship between Whisper and Raja. Particularly fascinating was their play behavior, not the rough predator games one might expect, but gentler interactions with Whisper often initiating through the play crouch typical of domestic cats, while Raja responded with the soft pawing behavior seen among young snow leopards in zoos. One morning, Ms. Reeves woke to unusual sounds from the porch. Looking through the window, she witnessed an extraordinary sight. Whisper and Raja resting together on the wooden deck, the domestic cat's smaller form nestled against the snow leopard's side, both watching the sunrise with relaxed alertness. This was the first time Raja had approached the cabin so closely, indicating significant comfort with his new environment. Ms. Reeves quickly photographed this scene through the window, avoiding any disturbance. One of these images, with perfect morning light illuminating Raja's pale coat and highlighting Whisper's silver tabby markings, would later grace the cover of her research publication and be featured in conservation literature worldwide. 3 weeks later, Dr. Chun contacted Ms. Reeves with encouraging news. The Altai Conservation Project had agreed to accept Raja into their rehabilitation program, expressing particular interest in his relationship with Whisper and viewing this as a valuable research opportunity for their interspecies behavior studies. The remaining challenge was international transport of a snow leopard, a complex logistical undertaking requiring extensive permits, health certifications, and specialized handling. Ms. Reeves, with her research background and professional connections, volunteered to coordinate the entire process. This process proved more complicated than anticipated, involving quarantine protocols, veterinary examinations, and wildlife import-export documentation that took months to complete properly. During this waiting period, the relationship between Ms. Reeves and Raja gradually developed. Initially, the snow leopard maintained careful distance, appearing only when Whisper was present. But gradually, through patient respect for Raja's space and consistent, non-threatening behavior, Ms. Reeves gained acceptance. A breakthrough occurred when Raja allowed Ms. Reeves to remain nearby while he fed, a significant display of trust from a predator species that typically guards resources aggressively. This acceptance represented a major shift in Raja's comfort level with human presence. One afternoon, while sitting on the cabin steps with Whisper beside her, Ms. Reeves was surprised when Raja emerged from the forest and settled just 10 feet away. For nearly an hour, 3 beings, human, domestic cat, and snow leopard, shared space in remarkable harmony, each accepting the other's presence without tension or fear. This moment crystallized Ms. Reeves' understanding that the bond between Whisper and Raja was too significant to sever. Observing them resting together in the afternoon sunshine, she realized that separation might not only cause psychological distress but could also undermine Raja's chances of successful rehabilitation. A bold idea formed in her mind. She contacted Dr. Chin again, proposing what initially seemed like an impossible plan, bringing Whisper to Mongolia along with Raja. She argued that Whisper's presence could be a crucial factor in Raja's rehabilitation, providing psychological stability and security while he relearned natural behaviors in a new environment. Dr. Chen was initially skeptical, but after reviewing the extensive video documentation and behavioral observations Ms. Reeves had compiled, she began to see the merit in this unconventional approach. She promised to present the proposal to the project directors. A week later, Dr. Chen returned with unexpected news. The project leadership not only approved bringing Whisper to Mongolia but also invited Ms. Reeves to join as a consulting researcher. They viewed this unique situation as an unprecedented research opportunity in animal behavior and innovative rehabilitation methodologies. This offer came at a perfect moment in Ms. Reeves' life. At 54, she had been struggling with the transition from active fieldwork to retirement, missing the purposeful work that had defined her career. The Oregon cabin, while peaceful, sometimes felt isolating after years of collaborative research environments. The opportunity to return to meaningful conservation work, particularly in a region she had never studied, was both professionally exciting and personally rejuvenating. After careful consideration, she decided to accept. Over the following months, she arranged everything necessary, leasing the cabin to a local artist seeking solitude for her work, completing legal procedures for Raja's transport, and preparing both Whisper and herself for their new life in Central Asia. 2 months later, Ms. Reeves, Whisper, and Raja arrived in Mongolia. The Altai Conservation Project, spanning 75,000 acres of mountain steppe and alpine forest, welcomed them with landscapes that took Ms. Reeves' breath away, endless grasslands stretching towards snow-capped peaks, crystalline streams cutting through valleys, and skies so vast they seemed to swallow the horizon. For Raja, this was his first experience of terrain similar to his species' natural habitat. Ms. Reeves didn't simply deliver Raja to a new sanctuary, she had transformed this journey into a new chapter of her career. With her experience and credentials, She accepted a senior research position focused on developing innovative rehabilitation protocols for captive-born snow leopards and documenting interspecies relationships in conservation contexts. Raja was placed in a large enclosure designed to simulate natural snow leopard territory, complete with rocky outcroppings, varied elevations, and gradually introduced live prey for hunting practice. This area allowed him to relearn essential survival skills while remaining monitored and supported by research staff. Whisper, with his adaptability and intelligence, was permitted regular supervised visits with Raja. The domestic cat quickly adjusted to the new environment, fascinated by the different scents, sounds, and wildlife of Central Asia. Whisper's presence not only benefited Raja but also aided Ms. Reeves in her research, as his acute senses often detected wildlife activity before human observers noticed anything unusual. Their new home was a traditional yurt at the edge of the research station, with views across vast steppes toward distant mountains. Each morning, Ms. Reeves woke to the calls of Mongolian larks and golden light streaming across endless grasslands. Whisper often perched near the gare's entrance, observing this new world with undimmed curiosity, while Raja could frequently be seen at the edge of his enclosure, as if ensuring his feline companion remained nearby. In the months that followed, researchers began documenting a remarkable phenomenon. Whisper's presence appeared to significantly enhance Raja's rehabilitation progress. The snow leopard, who had been too domesticated and had lost many wild instincts after years in inadequate captivity, began displaying increasingly natural behaviors when interacting with Whisper. Camera traps captured fascinating scenes of Whisper and Raja together, tracking movements of wild prey species. Instead of the impulsive chasing typical of domestic cats, Whisper demonstrated remarkable patience, remaining motionless for extended periods while Raja learned to wait for optimal hunting opportunities. On one occasion, Whisper detected a poisonous snake and immediately retreated, alerting Raja to the danger through body language and vocalizations, a clear example of interspecies communication about environmental hazards. Particularly significant was the evolution of Raja's hunting technique. Initially, he lacked fundamental skills like silent stalking and efficient killing methods. But gradually, through awakening instincts combined with learning from other snow leopards in adjacent enclosures, Raja began hunting more effectively. Whisper, while not a natural predator of large prey like Raja, still played a supportive role, sometimes locating smaller animals or participating in the early stages of hunts through his superior hearing and scent detection. Their relationship became the central focus of Ms. Reeves' research, a rare documented example of how different species could interact and support each other under specific circumstances. She meticulously recorded every interaction, analyzed behavioral patterns, and compared her findings with existing literature on interspecies relationships. This work gradually evolved into a comprehensive study that would later be published as Feline Bridges: Conservation Applications of Interspecies Bonding in Big Cat Rehabilitation. Ms. Reeves' research extended beyond documenting Whisper and Raja's relationship to exploring practical conservation applications. She developed a theoretical framework for using domestic animals as intermediaries in big cat rehabilitation programs, bridging the gap between captivity and wild environments. This model, initially met with professional skepticism, gradually gained recognition and support within the international conservation community as results demonstrated its effectiveness in Raja's successful reintegration into natural behaviors.